Hello and welcome to our first lesson on the racist origins of policing in the United States. My name is Deshawn Sheriel, and I am your instructor. To begin, let's take a moment to reflect on the history of policing in this country. The modern-day police force as we know it today has its roots in slave patrols that were established in the southern United States in the 1700s. These patrols were groups of white men who were responsible for monitoring enslaved people and preventing rebellions. The idea of a police force to maintain order in society did not fully develop until the mid-1800s, and it was largely influenced by the slave patrols. The first official police department in the United States was established in Boston in 1838, and by the turn of the century, many major cities had established their own police forces. Unfortunately, the racist ideology that underpinned the slave patrols continued to shape the development of policing in this country. In the early days of policing, the primary role of police officers was not to protect and serve the community, but rather to enforce racial segregation and maintain the status quo. For example, in the South during the Jim Crow era, police officers were often tasked with enforcing laws that mandated segregation and discriminated against black people. In many cases, police officers themselves were members of the Ku Klux Klan or other white supremacist groups. Even in the North, where segregation was not legally mandated, police officers were often hostile to black communities and engaged in practices such as racial profiling, harassment, and violence. The 1960s saw a rise in civil rights protests, and police officers were often called upon to suppress these protests through the use of violence and force. So, what is the impact of this racist history of policing? Well, for one, it has led to a deep mistrust of police in many communities of color. When police officers are seen as an occupying force rather than a public service, it is difficult to build trust and cooperation between police and community members. Furthermore, this history of racism and violence within the police force has led to systemic issues within the criminal justice system. In conclusion, it is important to recognize the racist origins of policing in the United States in order to understand the current state of policing and the need for reform. As we move forward in this course, we will explore potential solutions to the problems caused by this history, including the A Life for a Life Accountability Act. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to our next lesson.